Hi, this is Mark from Productive Computing, and in this video we're going to talk about a webinar that was done by Richard Carlton Consulting and Productive Computing. Also featured on the video is Richard Carlton himself. Together we brought some information to the community about a migration tool. This is a migration tool that FileMaker released. It's part of a paid membership program at FileMaker, and you can get more information on the links below. But the bottom line is we here at Productive Computing created a FileMaker Data Migration Assistant. We're calling it the FM Data Migration Assistant. And this is a file that's completely unlocked and available as part of a free course at our brand new Productive Computing University. So if you take the course, you can download the free file and learn how the file works, learn how the data migration tool works from FileMaker. So together, this is a complete package which makes it 1,000 times easier for developers to actually migrate data. So there's a number of reasons why you'd want a data migration tool, but the biggest one is to, during the development process, it makes it easier to deploy a live solution while you don't have to move that data manually and wait all the time that it takes to move data. So join us now, and we just take you on a journey. If you really want to explore this subject, this is the way to do it. Thanks for watching.
Richard Carlton here. We are happy to be presenting to you today live from California. I can mute all that. And I've got the ace hitters from Productive Computing, what I affectionately refer to as the evil twins. They are here.
Hello.
Evil twins are on the job. So They are in Southern California. I'm kind of in Northern California. We're bringing this webinar to you because it's really, in my opinion, the hot item for the FileMaker 17 release. I mean, there's lots of little nice to have things in there, but this is the one piece of the release that probably changes the product line. So real quick, who are we? We're RCC. We're the folks that do all the training videos for the FileMaker platform. We have books in market, etc. We also have the new FileMaker 17 platform video course. It's about 55 hours. We also have a complete bundle for those of you who have been wanting to know about this. The real quick slide about what you can get if you want. This webinar is about stuff that's basically, for the most part, largely free. But if you're interested in getting a complete training bundle that includes FileMaker Pro Advanced, right, and includes the starting point enhanced and all the video courses, we have a one-time or limited time offering for $199. And I've been told that's the at this point the cheapest way to get into FileMaker 17 for a single user. Now, moving along to our ace hitters here, the real stars of the show today, the folks at Productive Computing. So I want to welcome Keith and Mark. Say hi, guys.
Hey, Mark here on camera. Keith is behind the scenes on his headset.
That's right.
So these guys have been around a long time. They have a great consultancy down in the Southern California, San Diego region. They actually do a lot of finished good product. You guys have a lot of products and plugins and things. Why don't you tell us about that real quick?
Sure. Yeah, we have a ton of plugins. We've been around since 1996, so that adds up. Our first plugin was in 1998. It was Change Printer, and it was because FileMaker didn't have the ability to automate the changing of printers, so that's where it all started. And we did it for a customer, and then the rest is history. So now we have plugins that do a variety of things. Our biggest sellers are the FM Books connector for the desktop version of QuickBooks, so we can connect FileMaker and QuickBooks. We also have some plugins that work with Microsoft Outlook and Exchange. Some are server-side, some are based on working directly with Outlook. So those are also very important products and plugins for the industry. We have other plugins that work with PDF automation. We have utility plugins. We have a biometric plugin, which I think RCC knows about. We also have eSign. You can take a signature on a signature pad and bind that with data in FileMaker. So just a wide variety of plugins. Then we have solutions as well, not unlike Richard Carlton has a CRM. We have a CRM. Ours is not free necessarily, but it also talks directly to QuickBooks and does a bunch of advanced things. So we have a Core 4 and a Core 5, which are, one of those is positioned here on Richard's slide. And then our newest thing is Productive Computing University, which is, we'll be spending a little time talking about that later on in the webinar. And this is a really awesome offering that is new for us. It's basically we're going to be teaching people how to use our products in a really comprehensive way. So if you really want to learn how to work with QuickBooks and FileMaker, for example, we have a course. In fact, Richard has presented here a coupon. If you look at the bottom right hand of that slide, there's a coupon code, and we're offering 50% off that course, which is normally $99 a year. It's a subscription course. We can provide 50% off through Sunday of this weekend for just those people who are attending this webinar, and it'll only be good for that time frame. Besides that, and Richard will talk about this too, I'm sure, we have the university free courses, which we have a total of 3 actually as of this morning. We just added another free one this morning. So the main one is the FM Data Migrator Assistant. That's what we're going to be talking about today. And then we have another one for the server management tool. So we've actually cracked open the API for FileMaker Server 17, and we have a tool that works in a really cool way for that. And then we have a third course, which is basically all our best YouTube videos. We've got 9 videos out there. We made a course just to present our videos for YouTube and give people some other links and stuff. So lots of exciting stuff. And of course, because we're QuickBooks associated, we can sell licensing for QuickBooks and FileMaker and all that good stuff. So that's pretty much productive computing in a nutshell. Now, I know I don't want to go on too much longer, but our main revenue source is custom development. After I've said all of that, we're still, and I think that's not uncommon. And if you do products in the FileMaker world, that you still at the end of the day sell a lot of consultation, professional design services, and custom development for new and old systems.
Cool. So so that's productive, and the reason they're here is because they have done some really neat, amazing things for the FileMaker platform. And specifically, the thing they've done today is kind of a free thing, and I always like free. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. Everyone likes the smell of free software in the morning, right? So
yes,
and so that's what this is largely about. But it's not just free; it's super critical. So let's talk about this a little bit. I'm going to dive into kind of an overview here. So before we get going, though, this slide reminds me that if you're going to be out in the Dallas, Texas area in the first part of August, come and see myself, come see 360 Works, and also Productive Computing, the 2 vendors that we talk to. We'll be actually hanging out with these people quite a bit. So Productive is going to have a booth there. Some of the other vendors are there. 360 is another vendor we like a lot. And so these guys are really great universally across the board. I promote organizations and companies that do a great job, really great job, and they bring substantial value to the community, and so that's why we're having this conversation today. So they will be there in force, hopefully not drinking too much, but you never know at these events, people can get a little sloshy sometimes. So are we ready to start into this? Yes, everyone smiles, good to go? Right on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend a couple minutes in outlining kind of the case for the data migration tool. The data migration tool is a new piece of software that came out of FileMaker with the 17 release. And what it does is it moves data from point A to point B. And let me explain to you what I'm talking about. The idea is that if you have a FileMaker solution that your users are using, and they're using it and adding data and editing data to it, and what ends up happening is that they will want to upgrade to a new version. And frequently, a developer will be working on an offline copy, adding capabilities, adding reports, adding layouts, fixing bugs. And of course, historically in the FileMaker platform, there's never been an easy way to migrate the data forward from the live file, which has the older features, to the new file, which has newer features. And so the idea is that FileMaker came out with a data migration tool, and previously you had to run a series of import commands. For those of you familiar with this process, it would be import this table, then import this table, then import this table, hope all the alignment works correctly, which you're crossing your fingers on, and then reset the serial numbers and all this sort of thing. And it takes a long time to do this. I mean, like hours and hours and hours, and that's assuming it works, right? The first time you aligned everything perfectly. If it's something's off, like one field is misaligned, then you can start all over kind of stuff. So it's not good. It's been this way for a long time, but it's been kind of, frankly, one of the Achilles heels of the FileMaker platform. This Achilles heel is starting to go away. It's going away. It's really great. FileMaker is very focused on making improvements on how people can deploy easily, updates, deploy new versions of their custom apps. So that's what this is all about. And so the idea is that the data migration tool takes the source data on one side. It takes the new file that you've been working on, the schema. So it's like the structure and the schema on the clone on this development side over here, and it brings them together and it kicks out a new file, right? It's really an important piece to understand. In fact, it's so awesome and so amazing. Some of us are like, hey, you know, we've been waiting for this. Where's this been? Where have you been my entire life, right? And so that's what this webinar is about. And so understand from our perspective, and really FileMaker has worked to identify some of these kinds of people, but really in the FileMaker community, if you're part of this webinar, you fall probably into one of these 4 slots. And so we have, of course, business owners who really, they don't even care so much that it's FileMaker, other than the fact that they get a high return on investment for their money that they put in. If they put $1 into development, they're going to get $4 or $5 of efficiency back out or more. And then, of course, we have different levels of developers, people who are brand new, all the way to people who are intermediate, and all the way to people who are, frankly, like the evil twins here in the webinar from the productive computing folks. They're very, very senior ninja kind of people. It's like some of my staff. And so they sit down and they love to code, right? It's their idea of a good time is coding, right? And that's fine. That's the world is based upon people who are brilliant and who can do that kind of stuff. So this webinar is interesting to the business owner because they're going to save money. For the brand new user, if you're brand new and you're just brand new to FileMaker, it's something that you probably want to keep in the back of your mind as something that you can use in the future. But probably the idea of migrating from file A to file B, conceptually you'll be good with it, but the reality is you're still trying to learn relationships, basic scripting. So it's one of those save for later kind of conversations. If you're an intermediate FileMaker person, you've been using FileMaker a couple, 2-3 years, and you kind of understand the concept of updating to a newer version of a file, then this is going to be very appealing to you. If you're a senior FileMaker developer, you realize how many hours this is going to save. So this is kind of a big deal. So how do you get this software? How do you get the FileMaker Data Migration Tool? Either you're going to be part of the FBA, which is FileMaker's consulting program. If you're an FBA, then you already know that you are, and so you can go get it as part of your benefit package. You pay for that, right? Additionally, if you're not part of FBA, you can go and purchase FileMaker's annual developer subscription. So this is a interesting little subscription that FileMaker has that gives you a number of little features here. Gives you access to pre-release software and various other things like that. But it also gives you access to the iOS app SDK and the FileMaker Data Migration Tool. And so it's $99 a year, and then you get the download for it. Once you buy that, you'll be able to go to your software benefits page on the FileMaker community and find the FileMaker Data Migration Tool as part of your benefits. Does that make sense? So that's how you're gonna get this base tool. And really what we're talking about is this engine. It's a piece of code, it's an engine, it's a black box that does the migration for us. The issue with this engine is that it's kind of a command line tool. It's not very graphical. It's not very, frankly, friendly to most normal people. We had a webinar 2 weeks ago. We talked about this. I said, well, setting up the command line doing this is difficult. And I had a couple people who were obviously that ninja developer, the person on the right, saying, oh, it's easy for us, right? Except that the webinar is not just about the top 2% in the FileMaker community. It's about everyone in the FileMaker community, including people who are not going to be comfortable with the command line. So it was an interesting conversation. The gentleman was right, obviously, and I had a chat with one of my senior engineers last night, and I was trying to make sure in their mind they understood that their audience they were talking to, because they start thinking like coders, and then they go into meetings where they talk to what I call normal humans, and they have to remember that things that they enjoy or things that they know how to do are things that the rest of the world generally it doesn't either care about or doesn't want to learn. And for a lot of people, that's the command line. They don't want to learn it. It's something different and foreign to them. And as a result, there's going to be some friction with this, right? Now, I have actually gone through and learned how to do it, but what's cool about this is that, and why this whole webinar exists today, is to, one, show you, make the case for this, but then show you what we're calling a wrapper app. A wrapper app is an application that wraps around this command line tool and makes it beautiful, pretty, and easy to use. And that's what productive computing has done. They brought a fantastic wrapper application that makes this much simpler to manage. And so when we get to that part of the demo, we're going to kick it over to the evil twins and have them show this off. It's great stuff. So real quick, let's go through the process. So of course, these are the evil twins. They were using jetpacks to levitate in the air. They are, it's quite funny. Someone asked me how the hell they were that taller than I was, and I said it was a Harry Potter swish and flick thing with the wand.
Yeah, we had people asking us the same question, knowing full well what the story was.
Quite funny. All right, so these guys are awesome, to be clear about it. They're pretty modest about it, which is great, but at the same time, they're providing a very important tool. So let me make the case for this tool, let me explain to you what it does. And then once we kind of get through this, it'll take us about 5-10 minutes to go through this. So one thing to understand under the hood is that as you define fields, you define layouts and tables, every object in FileMaker has a hidden ID number. And it's very important that you understand this. So it has like a field has a name like first name. That first name field will have a hidden number that you don't see as a general rule. Unless you're a super secret ninja developer, you can find the ID number. But as a general rule, for 95% of the people in this webinar, you're never going to see that ID. But you need to know it's there. If you change the name of an object, the ID doesn't change. It's kind of like, you know, for the most part, if you buy a car and sell a car, you don't normally get a new license plate for the car, generally. What they do is they just change the name, who owns the car, but the ID of the car, the license of the car generally stays the same. That's how this works. That's how FileMaker works inside. If you ever wondered how you could change the name of a script and then everything that was connected to it was still connected to it somehow magically, that's how this works. So FileMaker internally runs everything, tracks everything on ID numbers. It doesn't really do it with the name. That way you can change the name and it doesn't break anything, which is really quite cool. So what the data migration tool does is it basically is going to take all the data out of the older file and move it over to a clone of the new development file. A clone is a stripped down version of the file with no data in it. So this file over here has all the data from your users. You're going to shut it down off the server. You're going to bring it down locally to a machine that you're on. Then you're going to take this a clone of the new version of the file. So there's no data in here. There's maybe gigabytes of data over here. And we're going to run it through this tool, and it's going to kick out a new migrated tool. The way it works is basically, FileMaker, in attempting to move the data over, it's something I refer to frequently as missile lock. It's trying to fly through the air and get missile lock on the other guy, right? And so if you're a fighter jet guy or a pilot or something, those of you know who I am, a pilot. And so for me, it's an easy concept. But basically, the migration tool is trying to get a missile lock from the data file to the new clone to line up the fields for us automatically. And it's really smart about doing this. It's really quite good. So the first thing it does is it decides that there's a lock on if the name matches and the ID matches. Makes sense. If you have in the source file, you have a first name field and it has an ID of whatever, and it goes to the new clone file, it finds the same name with the same ID, it knows that that's a good lock on and it will move the data for us in that case. The second lock on is interesting because what it does is say that you delete a field or create a new field and they both are first name, but at the time you delete the field and recreate first name, say you delete it in the clone of this development file and you create it, or however you come to the point where you've deleted the original, the ID changes. So if you delete a field and add it back in, it gets a new ID number, right? And so what it does, it says, well, I couldn't lock on before the other way, right? Now it's going to lock on just using the name, right? Makes sense. The last lock on, in fact, so this is what you can see right here. So it's locking on by the name, even with the table name, but the internal hidden IDs are different. So that's the second lock. The last lock, and it actually operates in this order. So 1, 2, 3. This is the order in which it does this. Is it does that ID lock based upon the ID only. And what's interesting about this is that, say for example, you change the name of a field or you change the name of a table. People are always changing the names of things, right? Because they figure out it has a better or more descriptive name. And what it does is that it doesn't get a match on the name, because that's what you see right here. It's invoices on the left side. On the right side, it becomes orders. Say, oh, we don't have invoices in this company. We have orders, right? So as a result, we have a situation where it's going to just come across based upon ID. This to me is super awesome, this piece right here, because it means that you can change the names on the new development file and it's still going to bring the data over. So awesome, awesome, awesome technology. So this is a copy of FM Starting Point. It has a ton of data in it. right? 127,000 records. It's about 750 megabytes, which is a decent sized file. And then what we need to do is we need to have a clone of the file, right? And so what we would do is we would go into the file and we would say save a clone. You're going to make a fresh clone. So you go save as, or correction, save a copy as, and you're going to specify down here at the bottom a clone, right? And so I'm going to save that onto the desktop, hit save. And so what this is over here, I can open it for you real quick. I'm going to duplicate it real quick. I'm going to show it to you. This is, I have to put my admin password in. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, very complicated. So this is a clone of the file. There's no data in it. It's only structure. It's layouts, fields, relationships, scripts, no data from browse mode. Does that make sense? So if I go to define fields here, I look at tables. These are all zeros here. All zeros, right? And of course, in the process of me opening it, the startup script already added a record in here, right here. And so what ends up happening is that if you create a clone, as a new terminology for you, it's called a fresh clone. And so we have the 2 new terminology items for you today. It's wrapper app, which is an app that wraps around this engine, and then a fresh clone. A clone file is one where people have saved it and it's empty. If you open it and then you close it, most people still think of it as a clone, but it's not really a fresh clone. To run it through this process, it has to be fresh. So if you open it and then try to run this process against the file you just opened, it's tainted. It's not fresh. It's like an old salad that's been in the fridge for 3 weeks. It's probably not good anymore. And so you have to toss that one out and you have to use the fresh clone. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and close this. And what we're going to do is go through a basic demo with the command line. And just a couple more minutes here to make the case, because it's important that you see how FileMaker gives you the tool and how it works. So this is when you download the data migration tool, this little black box is it. And you double click it, if it'll come up here, it brings up the list of available commands. So it's bringing up this command line, this terminal environment, so we have to do commands to put this in. Once again, if you're a very senior developer, maybe you're comfortable with this, but 95% of the FileMaker community is not going to want to deal with this. But just for the moment, let's deal with it. So I have a demo here, and what I've actually done is previously, it's like one of those baking shows where you're baking the cake for you on TV, and then magically you don't have time to wait for an hour for it to bake. They have it pre-baked, so it's done already. So what I've done is I worked out what the command line codes to make this work were. And what it is, it's a combination of these commands right here. So if I can zoom in on this a little bit, you can see this. These are the commands that we're going to execute sequentially to get this migration tool to move the data from point A to point B. And so we identify the source, the username, password, and then the clone file, right? And then any other options that we want to get into. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, create a new window. And so now it's got my little cursor right here. So if I start typing my command, right, we can run a command. Of course, if you don't type it exactly perfect, every character exactly perfect, it doesn't work. So what I've got over here is I have a piece of pre-baked cake or something we have in the oven. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in some more here so we can all see this. I'm going to paste this command in here. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that everything matches up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look over here. This is the source file. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of these old demos here. And so we have the source file, the production file. Here's the clone. If I open it, it's tainted. We'll have to start all over again. Now we have to check the path name here, make sure this is all lined up. So there's the source file. It's called FMSP English. That looks good. There's the username, password. The clone file has its exact name right here. Now notice right here, there's an underscore there, but there's no underscore there. This will fail. It says very unforgiving. And unless you like command line, it's not a lot of fun. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually make sure that this matches. So I'm going to come over here to the name here. I'm going to say English, and I'm going to say underscore fresh, and then I'm going to say underscore clone with a little c. And so it's all ready to go. So when I hit the return key, it's going to create a new file by basically merging these together at high speed. If you're doing import commands on a gigabyte of data, it'd be hours for this to complete. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the return key here. And it's running. It's doing it. And so as it runs, it's actually creating a new file. In fact, the file is over here. It's starting to build it. It's creating it, and it's actually moving all the data. And so what you can see is it's telling us with kind of like on screen a log that it's what kind of missile lock it has. It has missile lock with the name and the ID, or it can have a missile lock just on ID. Remember the 3 different lock-ons that we can have from the source to the new clone, right? So questions along the way? Margaret, Christian, you guys have any questions along the way? Okay, people are asking if it's 17 exclusive. Okay, so here's the deal. Mark can jump in here, but technically this is an FMP 12 file. Okay, so I know that it works fine with 6 files that you've worked with 16. Theoretically, it worked with a 12 file. Have you tried it doing a 12 file before and after with 12?
I haven't personally tried it with a 12 file, but our tool works with FileMaker 16 or 17. That's what it's certified to work with.
Right.
But as far as, I think you're 100% right. I don't think it would matter what kind of 12 file it is.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it's 12 opened in 13, 14 or whatever. Yeah. Yep. Doesn't matter.
So here is this. It's done. Down here, I mean, there's no blinking lights or anything, or flashing lights. It's done. It's finished. It's completed. So this is the new tool. So it's the structure of this file here with the data of this file here. If I get information on it, it's moved over 618 megabytes. If I double click and open it, I can open it up, and there we go. So it's basically done the migration. And if I had changed names in the new side of fields, and it would have lined them up. So basically, this is awesome. It is basically 90 seconds. They're about 2 minutes to migrate this data over. Warp speed, super fast. It actually takes advantage of multiple processors on your machine. Well, FileMaker Pro normally takes advantage of 1, maybe 2 on rare days, but most of the time it's just a single processor application, FileMaker Pro. This application will use many, many processes on your machine in parallel to move the data over. And so I'm going to let they're asking about value lists and security and stuff, and I'm going to let you handle that, Mark. So what I want to do is I want to segue here to make Mark the presenter. You've seen the basic tool, you've seen the command line, you see how it works. You can understand the value of it. You can also understand why it would agitate people, right? And I made it look easy. Anytime that you pre-bake this stuff, then understand that makes it look easy. But when I built this, I'm not a command line guy. It's not my thing. It took me about an hour rummaging around through this to get this to work. And the problem I had is I had a space in the name, and you can't put a space in here unless you escape it. And you go, what? Just, yeah, don't bother. So how about we show you the awesome wrapper app, right? Everyone ready for the awesome wrapper app? I'm very ready for this. So what we're going to do is we're going to transfer control to Mark, the panelist. Is that correct, Mark? You're going to be the presenter now? I'm going to make you the presenter. I'm going to say, okay. And so the video feeds are still going. You can still see our smiling faces. Good. And then there is Mark, and he's going to show a screen right on. And
I'm going to see a blue screen.
Yeah, we do. It's awesome. You're live on TV. So now, if anything weird or funky happens, then we're going to hold up, like a scorecard, right? It's like the Olympics from the old time. We have the East German judge. East German judge only gives you a 7.5 for that effort. So, yeah. So I'll be quiet to a point.
That's okay.
And then after that, we'll have to say
you can heckle.
You can heckle if you want. All right. So,
no
so show us why your wrapper app is so awesome.
Sure. Well, I want to start where Richard kind of left off on this. We actually did create a wrapper app. We call it the FM Data Migration Assistant. It is a FileMaker 16/17 file. And we did it for the same reasons that Richard identified. We don't want to be dealing with terminal necessarily. I mean, even if you knew, or even if you know terminal real well and you're a good typist, you still have to deal with, the path situation, the syntax, and then just having all those options, they're not really at the ready. You have to bring up the help file and kind of look at all that at the same time. That doesn't even take into account if you have multiple files. Now you've got to deal with this over and over and over again. Let's say you have a 10-file solution that you're trying to migrate, often. So we created a tool, and we wanted to just release that to the community really at no charge, because we think it's something everyone should have. So we call it the FM Data Migration Assistant. It's really simple. I'll show you under the hood maybe if we have time in a minute, but just the basics of it is you create a new, basically a portal record here, and you can see I have all kinds of options. I have the source information on the left side, and then I have the clone information on the right side. So I'm going to take you on a very simple migration, and then we're going to get it more and more complex so you can see some of the power once you have an interface like this. All right, so first I'll take a core 4, no, let me do a core 5, because that's a smaller file. And I'm also going to add a little bit of complexity here too, because some of these files that you might migrate have externally contained external containers. And this is such a case today. I have the core 5 with my external containers here, and this is all linked up. So if I open up the core 5 here real quick, and like Richard, I have some simple passwords. I think I'm using admin. And you can see here I have the core 5. And if you look right here in the middle of the core 5, you'll see container data, or you will in the first record at least. Let's just see here. Oh, we only put it on the first 500 records. There we go. So there's our container data. And I have 10,000 records. So it's a sizable file with containers. So what would typically happen in a production environment is, here's the production solution. These are where the users are going to use it regularly. And what typically happens is a developer will come along and grab a backup of that and start developing with that file. So let's just mimic that now. So I'll just copy and paste the core 5, and I'll name this dev. And again, Richard kind of went over some of this on his slides, but I'm just going to bring this point home one step further. So now I've got a dev copy. And what would normally happen is the developer would do schema changes. Yeah, so let's do a quick schema change. I'll jump under the hood here real quick. I'll go to my header and I will change something. Let's just change this blue to a red, let's say. There we go. And then that way it's painfully obvious that I made a change here. And now we're ready to go live with this file. The developer has done all the work and it's time to move this into production. And this is where the big crux of the problem is. And this is what makes this tool awesome, because moving 10,000 records across, in this case, I have how many tables? I have 12 tables, so it's not the end of the world, but there's just so much to do when you talk about migrating data. Let's close this file, but before I do, let's save a clone, because that's what you're gonna have to do this. So I'll save a copy, create a clone, and I'll put that clone in this same folder as where my production system is right now, which happens to be on my desktop in a folder called Core 5. So I'll throw that clone in there, and I'm going to take off the word dev just to keep it really painfully clear what we're doing here. So there's my clone. Save that. Close this file. Make sure you close all your files other than the Data Migration Assistant itself. So this is a FileMaker file here, the Data Migration Assistant, and you can use this like you would any other thing with containers. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my source, which in this case, my data is Core 5. So I'm just going to drag that right in here to this container. And then I'll go ahead and put the admin credentials. I don't have an encryption key, but I have admin as my username and my password. And then my clone, I'll simply drag that over here to the clone side of things. Okay, and there's the clone, and I'll put in the same credentials there. And I won't go too complex on this first one. Let's just keep it really simple. But I'll tell you what we can do. There's some options here which we'll explore later, and we'll play with some things. But for now, if I don't change anything and leave everything just as it is, it will give me a standard migration, and it will put it on my desktop. And so let's just do that now. Migrate that. Now this is a one-time question that you get, and that's only on the Mac side, which it's asking me now for my OS 10 credentials. All right, now the migration process begins. You can see it doing it. We also bring up terminal here, so you can kind of see how things are going. Now this was a small file with only 10,000 records, but it's already done. So quite quick, as you can imagine. And here on my desktop, if you look on the far right, you'll see Core 5 migrated. And if I open that up, like so, put in my credentials, I should see the 10,000 records with now red. And now this is now my new production copy. So I would then, immediately put this on the server and begin to serve this out to your customer or your clients or your users or however you want to look at it. But that's how awesome this is. So Richard doesn't know what the score is. Go ahead, Richard, pipe in before we go to the next step.
So people are already asking about the external container component, and you popped it open, it didn't see the container. So can you address that?
Good. And I'm glad you guys are paying attention, so that's good. So what would happen if you have this clone separated from its children, if you will, its containers? It's like you just saw, it's not going to show up. So the good news is FileMaker itself handles that sort of automatically. So all I would really need to do, let's go back to this production folder here. I've got core 5. So really this core 5 is sort of outdated. So this is now data that's old and the schema is old. So I'll just call it old. All right. And what we normally do with this migrated file, we wouldn't name it migrated. That's just a placeholder for now. So we would actually just change this to the original name. And the name doesn't really matter to make the containers work, but to prove a point, I'll now simply drag that core 5, the completed file we just did, into its same relative path to those containers, open it up, and there she be. So now all my containers are back because it's relative. Yeah, Richard had his card prepped. Very nice, Richard. All right, so that is awesome. So now we've talked about containers, we've talked about drag and drop, we've talked about one click, we've talked about moving data. If we have time, let's take this to the next level. Let's take a meaty system, something that's much bigger. So I'll go ahead and delete this file, and I'll put core 5 away and take out core 4. And I happen to have here a very big boy file. Let's take a look at this big boy file. Credentials showed up over here, so let me bring them back so you guys can see. I think this is admin. So I have here a database with 1 million records, 1,060,000 to be exact. And Richard, we should ask them to put commas in here because it drives me crazy that there's no commas up here.
Yeah, that's a yeah.
Anyway, so just as a point of curiosity, it's not often that we come across databases that have 1 million records, and perhaps you don't either, but it's interesting to see that FileMaker, even with 1 million records, you see me flying through these records, and if I did a search for, let's just say, tests or let's say Mark, those I brought up 1,501 records in less than a second. So for those of you wondering, hey, how does FileMaker handle 1 million records? I thought this would be just a quick aside. So I've got 1 million records in here. I'm just going to quickly save a clone. And I won't go through the effort of duplicating this and making a change, because you've already seen that. So I'll just call it clone, and I'll put it here back. Let's see, I want to put that clone back in my core 4 folder. So let's do that real quick. Here we go. All right, clone, save as. There was already one in there, but I want to make sure it's a fresh clone. And Richard, yeah, there you go. That's very important to have a fresh clone. Exactly. So you don't want to open that up, because if you do, the whole process unwinds pretty fast. All right, so I have a core 4 and a core 4 clone. Let me get rid of this migrated. I was doing some testing. Now I want to draw your attention to one important thing here. Notice that my core 4 is 1.81 gigabytes. That's not necessarily a small file, but that's kind of what you'd expect with 1 million records in a file of that size. There's also over 52 tables in the core 4. So it is a meaty system, but right now it's only 17 megs as a clone with just the schema. So let's go ahead and migrate that. Now, Richard, I'm going to show you something, a special surprise here today, because I know you've been using our tool and you have grown accustomed to dragging and dropping, and we've built it a little better now. We have it so that that's a 1.8 gig file. You don't want to drag that into the container and store all that here.
Yeah.
Just do a click like this and grab it this way, and it'll be instant. It'll get in there, because why store the whole file when you can store just a reference? So that's a little aside there, a little bonus for Richard. Then we have here the clone, so let's do that. All right, and of course I have to put my credentials in, so let's do that real quick. All right, and let's just say, let's do one other option here, which is, I'm going to run this in verbose mode. I didn't show you this, but you can run it in quiet mode, verbose mode, or what we call standard mode. And this gives you different output on the actual terminal. Okay, I think I have everything in place. Let me do one other thing. This time I'm going to tell it, instead of defaulting to the desktop, I'm going to actually tell it to go back to this folder. So I want it to go into the core 5 folder, excuse me, the core 4 folder. Let's do that again. Here we go, core 4. All right, that way it kind of keeps things neat and clean. So imagine for a second you had multiple files here. You can dictate where the files go and sort of organize your whole space. In fact, because this file is open, you could program your own workflow for whatever migration you might want to do in the future. All right, I think we're ready to go. Let's hit migrate. Here's my OS password. All right. Now, this is going to take a little longer because it's much larger. Now, this little screen here is us just telling you that we sent the commands to the tool, and now the tool has control over the situation. and we'll kind of vamp a little bit while this happens.
Yeah, we have a couple questions that have come up. I want to answer some of these. So first question is FileMaker Pro Advanced required? And of course, that's actually an interesting question. No, it's not required, but starting with FileMaker 17, FileMaker Pro Advanced is the only version of Pro that exists. So if you're a 16 or 15 person, obviously you could have Pro or Pro Advanced. Starting with 17, all the Mac and Windows clients are Pro Advanced. FileMaker kind of discontinued just the basic Pro. So that's and then let's see. They had another question here. People are asking about valueless and security in accounts.
Okay. Well, and the best way to learn about this, there's a pretty interesting help file that actually has been written about the migration tool, and it exists online. Let me just bring that up because then I can read you the real McCoy here. So I have it right here, and I'll blow this up while we wait. This migration tool, that last migration I did, shouldn't take much more than a minute, so that's good. But if you want to look at how it handles value lists, you have some choices here. And essentially, let me blow this up so you guys can see. You can choose to ignore the value lists. So in other words, you can choose to use the value list from the source file or the clone. You get a choice. And if you don't specify one way or the other, I think the default is the value list will come from the source.
That's correct.
Okay.
That is correct. And on the security, it's the same way. FileMaker considers the accounts, not the privileges, but the accounts and the value list. If it's a manually entered value list, it considers those data. And so as a result, they would come from the production file. So someone asked a question, this is a very important one, and we kind of danced around it initially, but what if I have schema changes on both files?
Right. Well, Richard did address that in the form of fields. So he had a field named one way on one file in the source, then he renamed it on the the destination or the clone file, or the one he made the clone from, I should say, with a different name. But because he didn't delete it, those internal IDs were, as he called it, what would you call it? Lock and load?
Yeah, missile lock, right? We have missile
lock, right. Right. And there's a pecking order for that, and I think that's actually specified here in the help as well.
Yep. Yeah.
Somewhere.
The question comes up sometimes. People have made added reports. So what they've got is they've got a file that's live. They're adding data to it. Someone adds a report or capability to it. Meanwhile, you have another file that a developer is working on, and they've added new reports and fixes. Yeah. And so people are asking us how to reconcile the schema. This tool doesn't really do that, right? Yeah. So what FileMaker, at least, so in a strategic sense, I can speak to this in a limited sort of way because FileMaker has made public statements about this. They are very interested in promoting and pushing improvements in this area of deploying a tool, a custom app, migrating a custom app, upgrade or updatability of your custom app. And so this is kind of like their first step on the moon, shall we say. And the first step is this basic scenario of your schema's on one side, your data's on the other side, and you're willing to live with that restriction. If you have schema changes on both sides that are not synced, and then you have data that, obviously, that's probably a down the road conversation I would guess they would have. I don't have any specific information on it. And if I did, we couldn't talk about it anyway. But the point is that FileMaker has publicly said this area of upgradability and migratability of your app that you build in FileMaker is of interest to them to promote this improved behavior, frankly, because it's a weakness of the platform. I mentioned it's a weakness. This is a huge step forward, and it's fast and it's smart, and then this graphical interface makes it easy to implement, right? So, but does it match or merge schema? No, it doesn't. So,
right, yeah, that's a good point. If I could, we're done with our big migration, and here's a little pro tip for you. At the end of the verbose log, or even the regular log, you'll see a timestamp. If you go to the very beginning, which in this case is all the way at the top, you'll see the beginning timestamp. So you'll have an idea of how long that particular migration took.
Was that 2 minutes? Right. Is that what that was? 2 minutes?
So it was 11:41 and 50. So let's just say 11:42 to round up.
Okay.
And we ended at 11:43 and change. So
90 seconds. Okay. So tell us about the kind of computer you have, because it uses all the processors. So what do you have?
Yeah. So I've got just got the iMac, the 27-inch iMac with a Core i7 and 4 gigahertz.
Yeah, well, that's a
24
smoking
megs.
fast box. How many processors on this one? Out of curiosity.
So this one has so it's basically it's considered a quad core. It's probably two processors virtualized into 4 or to 8 rather.
Yeah,
or 4 processors. I'm not exactly sure.
I think it's 4 into 2 is what it is normally.
4 into 2, right?
But 4 gigahertz is smoking fast. So to put this, if I had done that migration here, mine lightweight, 750 megs, and it would have probably gone to 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. Here's the thing: if this thing is anything less than 20 or 30 minutes, it's money in the bank big time, because this would take hours just in you lining things up in the import order, and then you have to watch it run. And so this is the everyone, we have the clapping line, the sign comes up, applause, right? Yeah.
Right.
And so this is a really big deal. Now let me
I can show you one other multi-file thing.
Okay, well, we have more questions, so let's talk about that. So I'm going to deal with privilege sets first, because this one I know about. Privilege sets are generally not considered data, so they are considered schema, at least as far as FileMaker is concerned. So the accounts, like Sally Brown and her password, is a data item, and it belongs to a privilege set. So if you're having people add the accounts on the production side, then that will come over. Now, if it comes over and there's no privilege set that was assigned to Sally Brown, like say, for example, they created a privilege set over there or something like that, what it will do is it will create a temporary privilege set for Sally on the new migrated file. So you'll have to go in there and adjust and fix that. But what it does, it brings it over and it tries to lock on and put it on. Once again, the three lock-ons, right? In a name and ID, name, or just the ID. And so it does that. Now the next one comes up. Can we clone multiple files at once? Yeah, there's no function for that. Cloning is an individual file by file process. Can you even script to save as a clone?
I think there's a save as script. I'm not sure if it can save as a clone.
Yeah.
It's good. This is like stump the guys tonight.
Stump the smart guys connection. Because both of us are certified, and the reality is that it's the area you don't play with. It's like custom menus. Like custom menus for me are like really painful, so I don't play with them. So when someone asks me a test question about custom menus, then I don't really know it. So save as a clone. So you could script that. So you could run a script as long as you could save it to a path, and you could set the path in a variable, which is kind of a newer feature of the last couple of releases. So yeah. So you could actually script all. Well, what kind of demo are you running here, Mark? You're supposed to be awesome. Yeah. So if you're a vertical market person, so some of you folks here, we got over 130 people here. If some of you are vertical market, you're building an app that you're reselling. For example, people I love in Sacramento, they're called Vet FM, and they make apps for vet clinics. This is the kind of stuff that they're all down there high on crack because they're in love with this thing. I guarantee. I haven't talked to them, but that's because they're all high. It solves for people who are doing vertical market apps. This solves so many problems. So in an ideal world, as part of your migration, you would want to script it. You'd want to script this process as much as possible, and you'd want to run through and save a clone as. Now, I'm not going to be fair about this, and once again, I promote a handful of really high-end companies. The folks at 360, this is a free tool, so this is free. It does a lot. The folks at 360 Works are making a kind of a wrapper app that we shot a video about, but it's a paid app. It's not free, but it does a lot more stuff, and it's specifically designed for vertical market people. You target the files, it makes the clones, it does all the importing, it really automates it to a high degree, but you're gonna have to pay for that. So once again, the wrapper app business is kind of an evolving marketplace. I really think there's a great place for the free tool, which what these guys have, and it's unlocked. And if you wanted them to teach you how to use it and to play with it, I'm sure you could hire them to do that. At the same time, if you want a wrapper app that talks to FileMaker server and downloads the files and makes the clones for you and then imports it and then it re-uploads it to multiple servers with one click, that's what the productive or the 360 tool does. So both these companies are great. And like I said, I always tell them I prefer they don't compete, so I don't have to like pick which parent I love more. Like which one might I love,
Right.
mommy more or I love daddy more, right? So I love both these guys and the companies, and they're great people, and they'll be at DevCon. And so this is, in this case, this is the free tool, which I will be using a lot. But if you start to do more elaborate migrations, then maybe spending a couple $1,000s or whatever it's going to be. I don't have a clue, but I'm sure it's not free, right? I mean, it's a paid product for them. So anyway, so I'm not taking that away, but you can take this tool and extend it. And this one's unlocked. So go to productivecomputing.com, go to their website. They have some videos that show you how to use it. Pretty straightforward tool, right? And if you want help with this and how to customize it to your needs, then you can pay them whatever their hourly rate is, and they'll be happy to help you with that. So what's your next demo here?
Sure. I'm just going to do a quick multi-file demo and actually migrate 4 databases with 1 million records each simultaneously using the tool.
Okay, so I was laughing, so I'm getting comments back. Apparently, the Vet FM folks, Eric Youngman and his the team down there, they apparently have baggies of crack. It says here we have heroin and crack, and we are high as beep on this tool. So they love it. So, but the point is that this is a feature that I'm thrilled that FileMaker is prioritizing. And yeah, we could have used it, like a decade ago, right? But I am thrilled it's here now. So once again, the people at FileMaker, you get a 10 for giving us awesome tools, right? Yes? All right, so I've been trying to distract everyone while you're setting up your demo. Are you ready for your demo?
Yes, I'm all set.
Good.
So what I did here is that you saw me, I added 4 records, or 4 portal row records, I guess you could call them. And I'm going to set these up to migrate to a brand new folder so you can kind of see, so I can kind of prove the point that this is simultaneous. Okay, here we go. Delete that. I'll call this
hey, just migrated. For giggles, before you fire this thing off, show all your processors down there at the bottom with your activity monitor. I love watching them all go full speed.
Okay, so you won't need to see the big screen, but you can see this guy here. So I haven't fired it off yet, but you can see. All right, so let's do that. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to direct each one of these to the migrated folder. So I'll just click Browse here and direct it to that. And the features you're seeing here were developed actually this morning based on an idea from someone who was a user of this and said, hey, what if you made each process its own unique terminal window? Could you do that? And we said, great idea, let's do that. And maybe we'll get some performance out of this thing on a multi-file solution. So that's what we're about to see here if we can do. All right.
So we're hoping this works. Is that what's happening here?
Yeah, essentially. It's okay. I like to fly without a net most days. Ask any of my staff, they'll tell you. Okay, so I've got admin, great. And basically, and just to show you what I've got here, I've called it Core 4 Multi. These are so I've got a 1.8 right next to a 17 meg and so forth. So basically the same thing you saw, but we're just trying to do 4 at a time. So I think we're good to go. Let's just see what options I have selected. Verbose mode. Yeah, that's fine. I'll leave it verbose mode and let the thing fly around. All right, I think we're ready to go. It's going to ask me for my password. This is one you don't want to get wrong because you get prompted quite a bit if you do. Okay, so you can see here. Now, this happened earlier this morning, so I was kind of prepared. Well, I guess it's working. All right, so let's take a look. In my migrated folder, you see 4 files are now created and prepped. They're all 17.8 meg, but this sucker is hunking down right now. Let's take a look at the processor and see what we got. Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically using them all in.
It's funny because it's here they are right here.
Yeah.
See, each one is running as its own little thing. So really, this is sort of like running 4 simultaneous apps at the same time, multi-threaded on your Mac in this case. So it's very cool. Well, what's nice about this is if you actually do have several files in the gigabyte range and you need to do this migration, a tool like this makes it a lot easier to queue those up simultaneously.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't have an SSD drive, solid state drive, please get one. This will, you will notice a massive performance drop off if you're using the old style spinning drives. So
yeah,
this is multi-pro. I mean, normally historically, FileMaker Pro has never really used multiple cores, largely because it's kind of has a one-track mind. It thinks very linearly, right? And so it's hard to multi-thread that. FileMaker server is multi-threaded, does multiple processors.
Correct.
But this one here is using, it's like a lot of times I don't go and buy a lot of multi-processor machines because what are we going to do with them? The most time they're sitting, drinking and smoking and not doing any work, right? So, oh, cool.
Right.
Look at this.
Yeah, you can see here, if you look at this little number, I don't know if you guys can see that there, it's 2726. That's the RPM of the fans in the machine. I don't know if you can catch it, but she's starting to warm up. It's all of a sudden, whoo, she's lighting up now. She's getting hot. So yeah, here it is, the fan, 2753. That normally hovers around 1200 RPM. So, and I can hear it getting louder and louder as this thing progresses.
Yeah.
So it's just, but it's almost done, and it should be done almost in about the same time as doing one, because if you have a strong enough computer, it'll just chew on them all at the same time and get the job done.
Very cool.
So that's very cool. But I thought I'd tease you with that. I'd surprise you with that today.
No, that's awesome. This is really good stuff. So questions from the audience. I'm getting in some of them, my folks are just answering your questions.
How about Chris Turner? You're on the line. Do you want to say anything about what you've seen here, or any comments on what it was like to build this? Under the hood, it's awesome. Chris Turner really does take the credit, should take the credit for building this. Here's an example script of what it was to migrate a database. This is sort of the things that are happening behind the scenes. We're handling all the multi-platform file pathing issues that you could possibly dream up based on all the features that you just saw.
Okay.
We actually take the tool, we migrate it and extract it and all kinds of stuff. So the tool itself is actually pretty straightforward. There's only like 4 tables and basic relationships, but the real magic is in the scripting.
Well, you get a 10 for commenting your scripts, right? Because how many people don't comment their scripts? Yeah, so make sure. But since it's unlocked, you can see good commenting and good design practices here. This is great. So
yeah,
excellent.
It's indeed. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Chris, by the way. Yeah, commenting was a big thing. It's always a focus in the university that I went to. So
okay.
But yeah, designing the process is, I'm a programmer. I'm C++, C#, Objective-C, that sort of thing. So working with the command line was pretty much second nature, and I figured I would take that knowledge and merge it into a FileMaker solution, make it nice and easy.
All right, so a couple more questions here that are coming up. So once again, I'm going to rehash some of this. We've answered these, but I'm going to back up. This is kind of an important concept. One is that the engine for this is distributed by FileMaker, okay? So productive computing doesn't distribute the data migration engine. In fact, when you get their tool, their wrapper app, you have to go and already have the data migration tool downloaded from FileMaker, and you embed it into the wrapper app. So the app literally takes that little ugly command line tool and it wraps around it. People are asking how to get the data migration tool, the engine, the command line engine. All this is running off the command line engine, even though it's been abstracted visually, right? And once again, your FBA membership, if you remember, you have it. If you're not FBA, you can go to FileMaker and buy an annual subscription for FDS, for FileMaker Developer Subscription. It gets you a handful of nice items. You can go read about that, but it gets you the data migration engine. And that engine is what you can either run it with a command line or you can load it into the free wrapper app that you get from Productive Computing. And so there's a developer subscription there. And so you can, it has various things to get. And then if you want the wrapper app and the training, you're going to come here to Productive Computing. And then I'm just looking at this. And then so someone says, well, what if I have someone who doesn't want to upgrade to 17? You don't have to use 17. You can technically use 12, but I don't think I have a Mac that 12 runs on. So as long as you're using 12 or newer, you should be in good shape. Someone says, well, what happens if there's you don't have a perfectly clean clone on the right side where we were doing the diagrams and stuff on the destination side?
Yeah.
Okay, this is not a negotiation. We're not negotiating with you. FileMaker did not say, well, if you really don't feel like it, you don't have to use it. It's a fresh clone. It's only a fresh clone. If you don't want to use a fresh clone, the tool won't work at all, period, zero. Now, someone will say, of course, well, how can we only have it migrate some of the tables, not other tables? This tool, is like a very bad hostage negotiator. It only has one setting. Do it my way or don't do it at all. Now, the only optional settings are to bring over the accounts or bring over the value list, really, and that's, I think, for the most part, what the customization. But so if you have a table that you don't want to bring over, then you bring everything over, then you run a script on that table and you do a delete all or a truncate command to blow all the data out, for example, right? But it's not like an import. You didn't see an import dialog where you're lining, this field lines up here and this line. No. It does, it's moving everything over. It's called a block copy. It's kind of technical, and it's written by some of the most senior people at FileMaker. Clay Mackle, who's a fantastic guy and a great contributor to the community. He built this along with a little bit of help from some other folks, but it's very much a black box. You target the source file, you target your fresh clone, and it goes. There's no negotiation. So if you wanted to do more than that, then you need to prep the data in advance, or then clean the data after it's done, move data around if you want. But you can't like realign. I really want this other field to go here, and that's not part of the deal. If you actually want that, then they have an import command now. You can just use that, right? But a lot of us hate the import command because it takes, literally I've lost all my hair here because of that damn import command and how long it takes. So I am a victim of slow code. And so this tool is fast code. It's so fast, it makes me nervous when it runs. So anyway, yeah, so I answered that question. Yeah, someone's asking questions about the different migration speeds this thing has. The technical document that Mark showed briefly, FileMaker has this document that effectively, if I were you, I would save it as a PDF and just leave it on your machine. But it's basically the under the hood document there. And it describes, if you go through it in detail, FileMaker will attempt to do the migration at the top possible speed. But if it gets to a point where it has to look at record data to make sure it's good or whatever the issues are, there's a couple issues in there, then it will slow down. And I remember during the conversation when this tool they were getting ready to release it, initially it was called those speeds were called fast and slow. And I go, well, fast meant fast, probably the fastest thing ever. And slow was like, well, is slow, how's that compared to FileMaker Pro import command? Because I thought that was pretty slow. So is this slower than that? Well, they end up changing the naming on it. And so basically FileMaker has the top speed it does. It'll shift down to a slower speed if it runs into conditions where it's looking at the records. You can read about that. Once again, for most people, it won't matter. It changes the speed very little. I mean, okay, I add an extra minute or 2 minutes to the process. Okay.
Right.
So what? Considering we come from hours and days, I'll get a coffee. I'll be back. No problem. And so for me, it's not much of a conversation, but okay. And then the last question here that's come up is the font matching question, right? Go ahead and what do you guys have on the font matching?
Well, the details are not completely verbose in this actual documentation, but the way it's understood is that you have your source file and you have font stylings, bold, italic, that type of thing. And I believe when you have this ignore fonts option, it will actually it'll migrate the data, but ignore the font stylings, thereby speeding up the process. And in some cases, that's what people want to begin with because they want to remove all that stuff because they've got a new layout or a new technique that they're using to handle that kind of styling.
And to be clear about this, for those of you who are newer, we're talking about font styling or text styling that the users apply in browse mode, not something that's applied in layout mode. Because layout mode, that's schema, right? It's not data, right? The font styling that a user puts in, like you always see like people copy and paste out of an email, and you get this giant weird data in fields, right? And so that is what we call locally styled or styled by the user. It's actually considered data. So you have the ability to trim that out, if that makes sense. So it's good stuff. So good questions here. Any more questions? Someone asked about serial numbers, okay? What will the next serial number be set to? It moves all the data over identically. It's not really doing an import per se. This is one of those things where people are trying to figure out, well, how does it work if I can't line things up? It's just moving the data over in bulk. And then so whatever the number was on the production side where all the data was, whatever the next serial number 581, if that's the next serial number, it'll be 581 on the new migrated file. It's not, and so if you don't like that, then obviously you're going to do a migration, and then you're going to run a script to go and reset those with a script. But basically, you don't have to worry about it. That's the cool part about this tool. So where's my little scorecard here? Here, this tool is a 10. It's a 10. You know why it's a 10? Because you don't have to worry about serial numbers or field alignment or any of that other stuff. If the fields don't align, it means that you've really changed the file a lot. And so in which case you should be thinking about how you want to migrate that. I mean, you could have a situation where this tool doesn't work because you've changed from the original file to the new destination file. You've changed it so much that structurally the import doesn't work the way it should, right? So, I mean, once again, first step on the moon. This is like FileMaker Go from 2010. FileMaker Go came out in 2010 and it worked and it was cool. It's kind of a train wreck, very slow, lots of issues. Now, a couple of years later, FileMaker Go was awesome. It's super fast. This is our first step on the moon. And for a first step on the moon, Mark, this is really good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're happy to have it, even if it's in terminal from the beginning.
Yeah, I would take it even in terminal. I'm willing to take it. I would listen. Most time people like, you gonna learn terminal? I'm going, no, I have a life. I've got other things I can do. I don't need to learn terminal. But I learned it for this because this tool is so good. Now, if we can cheat our way around it by using the guys at Productive.
Yeah, that's what we plan to do.
Yep, we're cheat. So other questions. Does it rebuild the indexing? The indexing, once again, it's not generally doing a reprocessing. So the indexes should come straight across, right? It doesn't dump the indexes. That's all part of it. Here's the thing. If you folks are really want to know, like under the hood, like mechanically what's going on, I mean, basically it moves stuff over and you don't have to worry about it for the most part. But if you really want to worry about it and wring your hands and stress about it, go to DevCon. There's a huge webinar putting on by Clay Mackel. He's going to dig at a technical level, like one notch deeper than this, and he will be able to answer the questions in more detail. But basically the idea is it's doing a block copy of the data. It's not looking at individual records really. It's moving whole blocks of data over. It's kind of hard to imagine. It's more of a coding concept, but it's not doing like record and import one record and re-indexing and then it's not anything like the old import command or the current import command. It's totally different. It basically is like a big bucket. It picks up the data and moves it and then dumps it. And all it does is make sure that the fields that were there are the same fields that we had before, the IDs match up, and it moves it. And that's why it's so fast. If it had to do an analysis on every record very slowly and recalculate things, like recalculate the totals and stuff, the tool would be slow. It would be as slow as the current FileMaker Pro tool. But what we have is a lot of people don't need all that extra bells and whistles. We just need the data moved over to the new structure because we built a new bug-free version, right? We always work on a new product. It's going to be bug-free or fewer bugs than what you had before, right? And you want to move people over fast, right? You don't want to spend all day doing it. 5 minutes, it's done. In fact, it'll take you longer probably to copy the file down off their server through the internet. Yeah, so the indexes come straight across. The serial numbers will be set to what they were. Once again, you're trying to, I think there's a lot of people trying to apply this to what they think of, the point of reference is the import. We've only had the import command with the alignment for 30 years thereabouts, right? So the question is that's everyone's point of reference. It's not like that. Sure. It's just a
different idea altogether.
Yeah, it really is. It's totally different. And it's great. I'm really thrilled, right? So anyway, read this document here. It talks about it. If you want more under the hood, spend the money and come to DevCon. I'll be there. Mark said every one of you that comes, he'll buy free drinks for. It's not really a problem at all. And it'll be a fun event because they're going to be, listen, so for those of you who don't know about this, FileMaker normally has a keynote address. And at the keynote address, they don't typically talk about the current product. They talk about stuff in the future. And they show stuff in the future. So if you want to know what's going on, right, in the future, probably show up the keynote. I have a very vague idea of what they're going to show, but not really. And so it will be good. The problem is you're not supposed to talk about it once you leave. But if you want to know the future of the platform, and this stuff is a big part of it, right? I can't wait to, I'm actually kind of excited. I want to see what the next step is because this is awesome, but it's only going to get better from here. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited. So yeah, so that's the DevCon. You guys will be there. You'll have, always deals on buying their stuff and hiring them. A lot of good vendors are there, a lot of presentations. But for me, the migration area is the area that I'm most interested. Improvements to the cloud services is a big deal, making it simpler, easier. And then also the data migration, upgrading, patching your custom app is to me the thing. So
So if you want this tool, it's free. Just sign up for the course. It's available as a download within the course, but then you have me do something similar to what I just did here to show you how the tool works and a little bit of that. So it's productivecomputinguniversity.com, or just go to our main website, productivecomputing.com, scroll down right in the middle there, you can sign up for that course. We have the other free courses there as well, or the paid one if you want to integrate QuickBooks.
Yeah, absolutely. And so so after the end of this, once again, reminder that we have the promotion for the complete FileMaker training course. It's an annual subscription, and it's currently on sale for $199 until the sale's over. There you go. So yeah, this is some of the courses from Productive. Their courses are generally very product specific, which is great. If you're looking for general FileMaker training, that's where my team comes in, and we've got a great 55-hour FileMaker 17 video course that I'm already getting comments about it. They love it. So that's good.
Oh, that's great. That must have taken a while to do. So hats off to Richard.
Yeah, we started it in December, and all day and all night for 5 people for weeks, for months, and then it's done. So it's a lot of work. So, and we talk about this there, but if you want all the really super deep under the hood, get their training right here, which is the center course there. It's free, right? So the migration tool is free. So yeah, like I said, nothing smells as good as free software in the morning. So if you have any additional questions, shoot it to us, RCC, support at RC Consulting, or the folks, what's your support email there, Mark?
Just support at productivecomputing.com or sales at productivecomputing.com.
Yeah.
Depending on the question type.
Yeah. If you have a credit card in hand and you want to spend $1 million, then email sales at productivecomputing.com. So with that, any parting final comments?
No, thanks for the opportunity to do this collaboration here with Richard. I had a great time this morning talking FileMaker.
Yeah, well, I always like showing off people's awesome tools. It's a good tool, and we're going to use it a lot. So anytime to show off something that's awesome, I love it. So this is Richard and Mark from RCC and Productive Computing. We're going to see you at DevCon, and we'll catch you in the next video. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this video. For more content like this, consider subscribing to our YouTube channel, liking our Facebook page, or following us on Twitter and LinkedIn. We also have a monthly newsletter describing the latest happenings here from Productive Computing, as well as other industry-related news. Thanks for watching.